Today, we're installing live valve shocks on a Ford F-150. This video is also applicable for our other factory race series for the F-150 for both passive and semi-active suspension systems. Please take a moment to read the safety guidelines. Start by removing the vehicle's front wheels. Next, disconnect the ABS wire from the upright. Move on to disconnecting the tie rod and sway bar end links. Using pliers, remove the dust cap, then the axle nut. Be sure to secure the truck's upright before you disconnect the upper control arm. Once you separate the upper control arm from the upright, you'll have enough room to remove the stock shock. Start the shock removal by removing the 3 top hat nuts. Don't touch the center nut as it's under load and holds the entire shock assembly together. Once the top hat nuts are removed, force the shock down so that the top hat clears the coil bucket. Now, remove the bar pin nuts. Once they're removed, the stock shock is free. Let's prepare the new Fox coilover for installation by applying thread lock to the top hat bolts and bar pin bolts. Put the top hat into the coil bucket first. Make sure the reservoir hose fitting is pointed towards the front of the truck. Loosely install the top hat nuts, then the bar pin bolts. Torque the bar pin bolts to 50 foot-pounds. Cinch up the top hat nuts, then torque them to 24 foot-pounds. Now let's put the front back together. Start with the upper control arm and don't forget the thread lock. Apply thread lock to the tie rod end before installation as well. Before going any further, make sure your CV axle is correctly seated. If it is, apply thread lock to the axle thread and install the axle nut. Next, we'll do the same thing with the sway bar end link. Apply some thread lock and tighten things. All OEM components we just reinstalled need to be torqued to manufacturer specifications. Once they're torqued, replace the dust cap and reconnect the ABS wire to the upright. Alright, let's install the resi bracket. Please note that your frame rail won't have the cross member if you don't have a turbocharged truck. We provide a bolt and clip nut for non-turbo applications. Okay, back to your truck in the video. Remove the bolt holding the cross member and align your resi bracket with the frame rail. Drill a pilot hole with a 21/64 drill bit. Next, line up the reservoir with the bracket. Make sure the bracket is slid as far down as possible on the resi and mark its location. Find the supplied hardware and apply thread lock to the clamp nut bolts. Slide both clamp nuts into the dovetail slot and fasten the reservoir to the bracket. Now install the bracket on your truck with the OEM crossmember bolt and a supplied self-tapping screw. Make sure you've got at least 1/8 of an inch clearance from the skid plate and any other components. Torque the OEM bolt to manufacturer specifications and the self-tapping screw to 30 foot-pounds. Then torque both the clamp bolts to 76 inch-pounds. There you go. Your front wheels can go back on the truck. Let's move rearward. The rear goes even quicker, I promise. Now let's start by removing your wheels. Next, unbolt the lower shock bolt and then move on to the upper shock bolt. Once those are removed, remove the stock shock. Don't throw any of these bolts away as we will be reusing them later. We need to start the install by putting some thread lock on both of these bolts. Install the shock with the reservoir pointed towards the front of the truck. Loosely install the upper shock bolt, then the lower shock bolt. You might need to use a bit of leverage to align the lower shock eyelet. Make sure that the lower eyelet spacer is on the inboard side of the vehicle. Torque the lower bolt to 75 foot-pounds and the upper bolt to manufacturer specifications. Moving on to the resi install, find the supplied hardware and install the bracket to the existing hole underneath the truck bed. Torque the nut to 45 foot-pounds. Line up the reservoir with the bracket and mark its location. Make sure you've got at least 1/8 of an inch clearance from any other components. Find the supplied hardware and apply thread lock to the clamp nut bolts. Slide both clamp nut bolts into the rear dovetail slot and fasten the reservoir to the bracket. Torque both of these bolts to 76 inch-pounds. Now that you've installed your new live valve shocks, reinstall the wheels and set the truck on the ground and torque the lug nuts to manufacturer specifications. Make sure your suspension has proper clearance and then take your truck in for an alignment. Click the linked video to learn more on how we install live valve's electrical components.